Okay, I'm hoping we're on, so I believe we're ready to go. We're live. Hello, everyone. If you're logging in, I think one thing that we love to do before we start is if you are logging in, please tell us in the chat where you're logging in from. If you're in the Netherlands, please tell us where in the Netherlands. Always interesting to kind of see where people are coming in from. So fire away. Would love to know. And super excited for this webinar. My name's Hacken. I look after sort of our GTM and some of our partnerships here at Figures, but also I've been working hard on the Dutch market, which is how I encountered all these amazing people on this call, specifically Florian and Ingeborg. I can never get away from Virgil, so that's just my situation, but that's fine. And today we have a lot of stuff to go over. Hopefully in the next 45 minutes, we can kind of deep dive into this whole Dutch benefits survey that we collaborated on. But yeah, thanks for joining, and let's just jump in. So the agenda for today, quick introductions from all the speakers here. Hopefully you'll recognize many of them already. We shouldn't need to spend too much time. And then we won't go deep into the report, but we'll give a really brief high overview of what we did and how we did the methodology to it so that people can understand. And then we'll jump quickly into some questions and also some findings from the report itself. And we grouped some of the benefits together. And hopefully we can have a good debate around some of the things that really stood out and share some thoughts with all of you. And leaving a bit of time at the end for Q&A, hopefully at least 6 or 7 minutes. And so the first thing we'd love to ask, please ask questions. You'll see the questions tab in your bottom right section of your screen. As we go, add questions to help us fuel what you'd like to hear more and go deeper on. It will become quite intuitive as we go, but that would be really helpful to help us. It will be recorded. Any questions that we don't answer, we can come back to you with a follow-up and kind of maybe share that in some kind of extra briefing. But without further ado, I'm going to throw it over to Florian if you want to give us a really quick intro and then maybe a quick 1-minute pitch on YourCampus.
Cool. Thanks a lot, Haken. And well, nice to have everyone in the call. So just on a personal note, so my name is Florian, 32 years old. I live in Amsterdam. I grew up in the Netherlands, as you can hear in the accent. Founder and CEO of YourCampus. And briefly on YourCampus. YourCampus is a platform for flexible and personal employee benefits. So basically, in the first 8 years of my career, I've used benefits as an employee, and I was always surprised that everyone in the organization and all my coworkers would receive the same benefit package. So yeah, well, each age would get the same L&D, same pension, same mobility budgets, and I was always surprised there was little flexibility in there. So therefore, with well, a team of 32 people on a mission to make benefits more visible, personal and flexible, and happy to share some of our insights from the market today with you.
Maybe Virgil, you want to go next?
I'll go next then. I'm Virgil. So as you can hear, I'm not from Amsterdam, but I wish I was. I kind of love Amsterdam as a city anyway. But so a bit of backstory. I've been a HR professional. Oh, we don't say HR now. We say people operations professional. It's much cooler, right? So I've been a people operations professional for 11 years before I decided to create Figures. Figures is a platform that allows companies to have access to the best, most reliable compensation information on the market, right? As well as analyzing their own market positioning, so helping companies figure out where they're paying well, where they're not paying well, and have access to the best compensation information to make fair and efficient offers. And when we created Figures, right, at the beginning, and we have a number of our clients here, quite a number of our clients, but we had a benefits tab because we wanted Figures to be both for cash, right? To help companies figure out cash packages and benefits packages throughout Europe. But we figured out that while cash was very common across Europe, like base salary and bonuses and so on, benefits were often very localized. There was a lot of specificities to benefits in each country, right? So we were like this approach of doing one platform to manage all benefits won't work, and we'd rather partner with the best people in each country to nail down the best benefits reports in each country, which is what we did in the Netherlands. 250. I mean, we're going to talk about that. Companies participating. 7 people, and I mean, YourCampus in terms of cooperation is perfect. So I'm super happy to be here and tell about some of those learnings. And I'm handing over to Ingeborg.
Thank you, Virgil. My name is Ingeborg, also from the Netherlands, Amsterdam actually. I worked for about 15 years in recruitment and HR roles in the Netherlands, but also in a lot of different countries across the world. Realized that HR is done in very different ways and styles across companies. And I always really dreamed of helping companies create the perfect culture and the perfect work environment, which is after I left Molly a few years ago, I started my own company. And we have a really cool team of people and culture professionals, and we help startups and scale-ups to build a really strong HR foundation, so a good culture with great people. And we do HR interim assignments, some executive search, but we very often advise our clients on the right total rewards framework. Like how, as a company, do we put together a cash package in combination with benefits that amplify our culture and are attractive, but also a little bit innovative, because you really don't want to do the same as everyone else is doing. Which is why I love this research, just to find out what everyone is doing. And I hope to inspire you a little bit with some cool examples later on in the presentation. Yeah, that's me.
Awesome. And I love how Virgil on the 1 minute brief went to like 2.5. So we're good, but let's go. It's okay. So the report, and just really spending 1 or 2 minutes on this. So, I mean, the reason why us three came together was very clear. YourCampus brought a lot of the insights on benefits locally. Ingeborg and the 7people team, who we've done a lot of cool stuff with, they just had a lot of insights on things that we should be asking, how we should generate the report, and what would be kind of people be looking to kind of get out of it. And then we also, coming from the compensation side, as Virgil mentioned, would be great to kind of put that full circle around it. And I think for us, it was also context around benefits and how they could be used, not just listing them, for example. And that was what was really, really missing, and what we hope to solve in the report. We're going to link it now in the chat here, but that's what we did. And the biggest thing we also got from the report itself was, why offer benefits? I think the market right now, as everyone knows, is a bit crazy. What can you do on top of salary, or will salary stagnate? People thinking about cash burn. How can you be creative to kind of attract and attain the best talent? And, a lot of people are focused on benefits for that reason, but also for well-being and health, and engaging and making your workforce productive. Not surprising, it's exactly what we expected to see, to be fair. But then how do we do it? We kind of pooled our networks together, and somehow we managed to get 253 companies in and around the Netherlands to engage, which we were very surprised by. We didn't think it would be that many. And what we also thought when we did the survey, to make it relative and useful for companies, not just kind of looking at headcount of those companies, we allowed them to group themselves into different categories, which were kind of useful for them from a benchmarking perspective to compare themselves with. So we allowed people to select what they felt was relative to their company. So that's why we had startups, scale-ups, grown-ups, which was kind of a mixture of corporates and SMEs. And that's so that you can leverage the data to be, useful for your positioning and what you think would be good to compare with, versus just looking at all benefits that are offered by all companies. Almost 80% was within the Randstad area. I've probably butchered that pronunciation, I'm sorry. And most of them were working in the HR space. So that was kind of the key highlights of the methodology. Today, we don't have time to cover all of them. So what we've done is we've grouped some of them together, but we're going to run a poll right now. So we'd love to know what specific benefits you guys are thinking of maybe adding or focusing on this year. So if you move over to the poll section, please do let us know. It will help us steer the conversation in the next 2 or 3 slides. And again, as we go, please use the questions tab to list your questions that might be hyper specific to a specific benefit that you're considering or that you're thinking about. So on that note, I thought it would be quite fun to kick off with our first sort of question, or at least statement from the report, which we all kind of looked at and were a little bit curious to see. And if you've not read the report, don't worry about it, we'll jump in. And from the findings, a lot of the people self-reported themselves that their offering was only roughly 6.3 out of 10. So to kick us off, I'd love to throw this question to our speakers. What do you think of that? Is that surprising? you expected this, and with that in mind, what are the kind of opportunities at the really highest level before we jump into them that you think are coming out of that?
Well,
Florian, or
uh,
Virgil.
yeah, yeah, because I haven't been speaking enough lately, so I think I'd love to jump in right now. No, but my first point is, as we're dealing with most like young companies, right, startups, scale-ups, maybe less on the grown-ups, I feel when it comes to benefits, I remember the former HR, there's like so much you can implement that it's really tough to say, yep, I'm good. I think we've implemented everything we can implement. We're good. We've done everything in well-being, financial education, remote and flexibility, parental leave, and so on. It feels like there's every time you implement a benefit, there's like 3 more that you potentially need to implement. So I feel there's a perpetual insatisfaction when it comes to benefits.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of benefits that have kind of grown. So startups and scale-ups, they started with 1 or 2 benefits, and over the years, they might have added another one and another one, but they've rarely sat down with their founders and finance and legal team and said, what are we actually offering? How does that align with our culture and our values for the next year or years? How does it align with the people that work here and the age of the workforce, for example, and where they're from? And is this interesting? So a lot of the times for the HR people or the people that have completed this survey, they were not maybe even involved in choosing some of these benefits. So I think when it's a 6.3 on average, it's often because, well, I didn't make that decision. I'm not sure if they're still relevant, but it's very hard to change your benefits all of a sudden, because once you've offered something, you can't really take it back. So I think the 6.3 also comes from a few legacy benefits and probably the willingness to change it, because there's so many cool ones now. And then, okay, but how do I actually do that? So I also hope that we, through this session, inspire a little bit, and with the report, that there's actually really different ones that you can offer. But yeah, I think the total rewards overall strategy is often lacking still a little bit.
Yeah, I agree. I think that what we see basically, if you think about also the complexity and the resources you need in order to get a benefit package up and running, there's quite a few things you need to take into account. So there's an important fiscal aspect which needs research. So each, as everyone knows, we have different fiscal spaces to provide benefits. So pension, L&D, mobility, gyms, they all have separate rulings. So that's quite complex. So that always requires some external knowledge there to know what you can do. Then I think the overall market with new vendors and new options on what you can provide has grown a lot. So I agree also with Virgil. There are so many options out there. And then on the other side, of course, you have the needs of employees. So how do you stay aligned with what everyone values and what is important, what is aligned with the... So I think I'm not really surprised by the 6.3. And I think the big opportunity here is to get more aligned around employee needs, basically, to think more from the employee instead of thinking about what is just the fiscal ruling and the fiscal bandwidth I have. And I think with all the how we basically currently work. So back in the days, a lot of these benefits were maybe also office related. Yesterday I was at the Next Web, like a big shared office space, and all the offices were basically empty, right? So a lot of these benefits, they had a bar, they had lunch, they had a gym, all these office related benefits were basically not valuable anymore because a lot of people are working from different places. So a number of reasons, I think, complexity of setting up a program, as well as we changed how we work, that have an impact that a lot of benefit programs are a little bit outdated.
And maybe just kind of a quick one from me, Ingeborg, because you mentioned this, the process of removing benefits. Any experience on that? And, how difficult is that process? Because I guess people are maybe thinking about what they want to implement or change this year. And it's kind of maybe a curiosity question for me. It sounds like when you give people a carrot, they don't want to lose it. But any quick thoughts on that has worked well?
So basically, you give benefits normally to increase efficiency, engagement, your attractiveness as an employer. So logically, you wouldn't just take something away without replacing it for something else. So in this case, it's very much about the communication around it. If you say, we were offering, I don't know, kickbox classes in the office, and 5 people were using them every month and 195 were not. If you then take them away but replace them by a gym pass, which can be used by more than 150 people in various locations, then the communication around that makes a lot of sense. And you're not saying I'm taking something away. You're saying I'm actually offering something either more scalable, more relevant, something that you can use in your own location. When you don't have a OR or Works Council, it's a lot easier. So for startups and scale-ups, it's a lot easier to change benefits than it's for really large corporates. And I guess it also depends on if the benefits are part of your employment contract or if they're not. So that's also a tip to HR professionals, that if you are starting with benefits, but you're not sure if you want to offer them forever, you're probably better off putting those benefits with a little remark in an offer letter, but not in an employment contract.
Okay, interesting. Then let's jump in, and we just ran the poll, and what's maybe expected and what's interesting jumping into the next slide, well-being benefits and L&D are definitely the most people are thinking about for the kind of coming year. So kind of maybe throwing this one to Florian. So here's where we've grouped some of the benefits together. So Florian, on the well-being, communication, and mobility side, here were some of the kind of sort of the standout things that came out of the report. Maybe throwing the ball to you to get us started here. Any of these that really stood out to you, and that think, where could these kind of go further? I think that would be an interesting starting point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that the maybe just to start off with the well-being benefits, we see the same trend also within our customer base. So you see that specific budgets are made available for the well-being category. The specific question here in the report was directed to a flexible well-being budget, and that percentage is still rather low, right? So it's still around 13%. I think overall more companies are already investing in well-being, but typically what you see is that, I think Ingeborg just had an example, is that there's one single benefit available for everyone, right? So it's kind of like so there is a well-being coach for everyone. There is maybe a gym partner for everyone. And what you see basically then is that you don't match all the needs because well-being means different things to different people. So for some people that's going for the gym, some people that's maybe even throwing it out there, maybe financial well-being is something where they're more worried about. So it's quite well-being is we should stop, I think, looking at well-being as this is just providing a gym or just providing a mental well-being coach. It means a lot of different things to different people, and I think there's a big opportunity to provide a bit more flexibility in regards to that, to the well-being side. In regards to the mobility side, I think mobility is one of the biggest investments companies are making, right? So basically the commute, and this has changed a lot also with how we basically, because we went back to the office less frequently. So there are now a lot of interesting options on the market where in shared mobility, electrical bikes, there are different vendors in the market who provide a single card which you can use for flexible mobility benefits. So we're not talking here about the 19 cents or 21 cents per kilometer, but just more beyond that, match the new generation on how they travel and move from A to B. I think, and also on going back to the boring topic of fiscalities, on the fiscal side, you are able to provide more benefits. So on the mobility side, so but this is definitely an opportunity, I think, for companies. Another rare thing about mobility is it's a benefit people use every day. So if you think about pension, for example, you get it and maybe you engage with it a few times in your life to look at what is my pension savings or my retirement savings. Mobility is like a high engagement benefit. So it's something people use a couple of times a week at least. So typically it has quite a high high recognition also from employees that they get this offered. And then the last topic is, I think, one of the most interesting ones is communication. I think that you look at the report, we've asked when companies communicate around their benefit package with employees, and you see that by far this is communicated often in the job offer or during employee onboarding. And basically, once someone is onboarded and working at a company, there is a lack of communication around benefits. And therefore also, you see also that the awareness and the visibility of those benefits, and therefore also usage and adoption basically goes down. So I think for everyone joining today, I think that providing a bit more or putting a little bit more effort in just the communication part and making people more aware of what you are already doing is super valuable and also cost efficient for most people. Curious, for Jill and Ingeborg, you have something to add there?
I do. I think with the benefits communication, often they are listed on a website, and you see a few of those logos, and it's like we provide this and this, but the details are often lacking. Internally, people will have like I don't know, a Notion page or a SharePoint or a space where the benefits are mentioned. But still, if you have them listed there, employees won't just go there. So from an HR team perspective, I think it's really good to run sessions. So for example, when you talk about pension, it's a really expensive benefit. I think it is actually very powerful because it's also financial well-being if you build a pension. But you have pension providers who actually offer to come once a year to have a chat to your people and explain some of the legislation or changes or how it all works. So a lot of the providers, if you touch base with them, are actually quite happy to do like a session for your employees or create more awareness of how to best use the benefit. And I think even if you're not changing any of your benefits, it might be worth to check if your current providers can offer some extra documentation or information to the company to re-engage people who are already there.
I think there was a question on that, Hakon. Maybe this is one you wanted to take on, right?
Yeah, I think Elia just asked, how do you kind of improve communication around it? So I guess that kind of taps a bit into that, Ingeborg, but is there anything else that you can compound?
Yeah, so for example, there's a company I work for at the moment. We just launched an engagement survey today. And instead of asking, how do you rate our benefits? We've listed the benefits and say, this is what we're currently offering, because we can't make the assumption that everyone actually knows. And then you say, okay, well, this is our current offering. We offer this, 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 and this, depending on which country you are. Which benefit do you rate most highly? Like, what are we missing in terms of benefits? So an engagement survey or a poll is a really easy way to also remind people again on what you're offering. Yeah, I guess that's one other tip I can give. I'm not sure, Florian, do you have more on that?
Yeah, I think it's one of the things we do. I think is at YourCampus also, when we looked at product development, we looked at benefits which people frequently engage with. So mobility, food, well-being are benefits you can engage with on a weekly basis, and we combine them with communication around less engaging benefits, like pension, for example. So right now, for example, if you log in the YourCampus environment, there's a special place where you see, well, you have pension, and then but you don't go there for pension. You go there because your mobility budget sits there or your well-being budget sits there. So high engagement benefits, they create awareness on non-engaging benefits. So that's what. So I think the suggestion you did earlier, Ingeborg, just having one overview somewhere. I think some companies have a Notion page, but I still see a lot of companies who have a big opportunity, I think, there to have a better place to put it all together, basically.
I think on two things on that. One quick one is 2 quick points that, especially we're dealing with most startups, scale-up, grown-ups, right? Most of the average age and average tenure is quite low. I think we shouldn't. Most people tend, and most HR people tend to overestimate the understanding and financial understanding of the benefits, right? Just I really, most employees don't really get that when you pay for their transportation, it's way more efficient than giving them a salary on which they have employee taxes, on which they have income taxes, and out of the net, they have to pay mobility. Just showing them a graph of like financial optimization of benefits. I swear most employees don't know that, right? Which leads me to the next point. In my previous company as an HR, I was running every 6 months a compensation and benefits Q&A, explaining our compensation policy, benefits policy, benefits apply, what are the benefits of that, and opening up to question. I think was super good to keep having awareness. And my last point is, one of the good things about this report is for you as people as professional or founders to have to see where you stand compared to the market, and then use that in your communication. if you have something that's really aggressive that most companies don't have, right? Like, for example, we just talked with Florian about a flexible well-being budget. If you're one of the 13% of the company offering one, put it forward. Don't hesitate to tell your employees, look, it's not something that's normal. It's not something that everyone does around you. Like, we're part of the few companies doing that. We're offering more leave days than the average. Talk about it. Show that this, what they have, is more than standard, because most people, it's a standard physiological, sociological thing, the hedonic treadmill. When people have some benefits and some stuff that they have, they consider it normal and standard, and they forget that it can be something specific that most people outside don't have. So make that effort as people as professionals to tell them that some of the benefits you implemented are not that popular, are not something standard and common across the market.
Amazing. So moving on, but actually, and I think in the report, there was a section on each section where we gave some standout suggestions of ideas that people listed themselves that they were doing, which might also be useful for inspiration on that point, which might be kind of nice. I'm going to throw it to Ingeborg next. I know that you have a lot of thoughts on this specific area and topic from the well-being, from the benefit side. So would love to hear your thoughts here based on also what you think are super important and ones to keep an eye on.
Thanks. I'll start with the fact that I have 2 kids, and I worked for a company that when I had these kids did not offer any additional parental leave or top up. And my husband at the time got 2 days off. That was the standard for men 7 years ago, 2 days. And it was insane to see how much it actually cost us, because 2 days off as a dad when your wife has a kid is not enough, clearly. And I'm really happy to see that in the Netherlands, parental benefits have been changing over the past years, and it's a lot better now than it was 7 years ago. But if you think about the people that startups and scale-ups are recruiting, I think it's 75% of them will be in the age group of 25 to 45. In the Netherlands, 40% of that workforce works part-time. So not offering part-time opportunities and not considering parents who often first work full-time, have a kid, then go to 4 days a week, not making that very specific and not thinking around benefits is a really missed opportunity. Because when you're 25 and you join a company, you might not really care, but it won't harm the company to put these benefits on the website. But as soon as you start thinking about a family or you have a family, companies that explicitly mention these benefits, for example, in their offering or on their website, will be more attractive. I still see companies that really offer nothing extra because they don't have to. So for example, for dads, I think at the moment, or partners, partner leave is 5 weeks against 70% of a daily rate. But if as a company you don't top this up, what will happen in many occasions is that the partner financially can't actually take those 5 weeks. It's not because they don't want to, because they can't financially afford it. And they still go back to work after a week. And I think when you tie that into well-being of the partner, but also of the person who goes back to work, like you think about the sleepless nights and the stress they have from having to come back to work when you have, I don't know, a 1-week-old baby at home, it's so much better for the partner as well as the person having the baby to be together at home a little bit longer. That I think for a company, it's almost insane to think that an employee will probably have 1, maybe 2, highly unlikely 3 babies in the time they work for you. And if you calculate the cost of topping up the parental leave to 100%, it's minimal versus the impact on well-being and mental health it will have on your employee. So for me, it's such a no-brainer to at least top up the 5 weeks for the parents, but also I really love when the parents come back into the workforce, you give them a little bit more flexibility. So rather than saying, you've been off for a few weeks on parental leave, now you have to be back 5 days a week. If someone decides to come back full time, you could decide, you know what, we're giving you some additional flexibility. And for the first couple of weeks, you kind of zone back in. And I saw some companies who offer this. It's kind of like part-time entry back into the workforce after having a kid and then building it up again to the hours you're going to work. I really like that idea. But in general, companies that I work with, they often ask me, how can we be more diverse and how can we focus on D&I to attract a more diverse workforce? They often mean we want a better balance between men and women, and to ensure that you have that even in a little bit of an more mature age. And mature, I don't mean old, but you see that a lot of women entering the workforce and men are the same. Like you'll have 50-50 when they're young. And then gradually you see less women working for startups and scale-ups because large corporates and government organizations offer much nicer and more flexible benefits for parents. So one of the ways to actually promote and increase your diversity and a good mix in terms of gender balance is to make sure that women continue to feel welcome. And that's by helping with this. So I'm both passionate about it also because it's such an easy win. It's easy to implement. It's very high impact for the people it involves. And I also really like the leave component. There's a few, I think 25 days of leave is fine. And I don't really think that it's good anymore to offer unlimited time off. So unlimited time off, I think, was really popular for the last couple of years, but it's actually a lie because you never get unlimited time off. You're being paid to do a job. So if you then go to your boss and say, thanks for offering unlimited time off, I'm going to take a month off. I'll come back after a month and see what I need to do. Your boss is not going to be very happy or pleased. It's probably not even possible. So in reality, companies are tracking the number of days that you take off. And if you're above, 10 extra days per year, you probably need to sit down with HR or your manager to go, hey, you're taking a lot of extra days off. Well, it's unlimited time off. That's what's in my benefit overview. So I would, I was a really big fan a few years ago, but because of the concept of more flexibility, because of the concept of not being restricted to 25 days, for example, maybe some years I need 20, other years I need 30. I really don't like all the rules around how many days you can take to next year and like how you have to use them. But I think 25 days as a standard is not bad. And then around that, offering some flexibility and say, maybe you take some extra time when needed, or there's an extra 5 days you can take without having to ask for additional approval. So you make it a little bit more concrete as in what you're offering, rather than giving unlimited time off. I also liked a few companies where you get an extra day per year that you work there. It's like, thank you for being here. We love you're still here. We're giving you some additional flexibility. So I think there's quite a bit of, you can be innovative with the days off, but maybe stay away from the unlimited time off unless you really mean that. And I think, last but not least, I really love, it says only 4%, but childcare support, fertility support, there were a few really cool things that companies were offering. There's not so much yet. I think it's also really new that employers get involved here. And I hope that this number will increase over the next couple of years for the same reason that I hope that parental benefits in general will increase. And I think companies will just benefit by being able to attract a broader part of the workforce.
I think one thing on leave, if I may jump in, Hakon, is because I think there was a question, right, from Christina, if there's any innovative benefits or compensation program that Scale-up can offer to be attractive. There's one that has been very popular in a few of our clients that's tied to leave, is implementing like long service leave or long tenure leave, in the sense that employees that have been here, we have 3 of our clients, maybe more in fact, that have started offering something like after 3 years in our company, you get 1 month off paid by the company. 1 month to do whatever you want, to reward you for your hard work, because working in a startup, in a scale-up can be super tough, can be super draining, and after 3 years, like it's 4 years, right? 3 years in a startup is 20 years in a more mature company at that time. They started offering like 1 month off to everyone as soon as they hit 3 years of seniority and 3 years of tenure within the company. That's been one of the leave type of innovation in the leave area that I found pretty interesting.
Yeah, I think it aligns also with companies saying you can take a sabbatical. Sometimes it's paid, sometimes it's unpaid, but literally offering people the opportunity to not have to quit your job and go and travel, but no, you can stay with us and you can go and travel. I think that's also really nice just to know that the option is there. There's also a question at the moment, which I'm happy to answer, which was compensating employees for not being sick for a set period of time. I had a company where this was the case. So if you were sick less than 5 days a year, you got 3 days of additional leave. And I personally liked it because I was never sick. But it felt really unfair to people who actually were sick, because you don't choose to be sick. So if you, in these ages of Corona, where people might be like flat and really can't work, and they're almost like being punished for the fact that they're also sick, I'm not really sure if I agree with the policy anymore.
But I think it might be similar to unlimited time leave, that on paper it's a good idea to want to reward people. But I wonder if it creates unintended effects, such as people being like, I'm sick, but I want to get that premium, so I'm going to get sick to work. I'm going to contaminate everyone because I want to get those extra compensation, or pushing people to work through being sick. I'm a bit cautious of the unintended negative consequence it could have.
Same.
Yeah, I think that like we work a lot for startup scale, but we also serve a different type of customer, which are companies with a very large operational workforce. So in healthcare, retail, and there you see that the verzuim, so basically the rate of sick leave basically is much higher typically than at startups and scale-ups, I think. That there you see it's a bit more popular to like reward employees for, but that you see a big change of people moving away from punishing, but investing more in rewarding people for a healthy lifestyle, more than punishing when you are sick. So it's a bit of a controversial thing to punish people indeed when they are sick. Yeah.
Okay. Conscious of time, kind of going to our last sort of more formal slide, and this is kind of going towards you first, Virgil. And we chatted before about how we could maybe position this, but looking at those kind of benefits, remote work, learning and development, and financial. You know, I think from a figures perspective, we've done these benefits reports also in France and other regions. What are your thoughts on some of these, and kind of, you know, using that knowledge from the other markets, how it could kind of add extra insights to the Dutch market?
Yeah, it's a very good point. I'll start with the last one. So last one was the most surprising finding to me when we looked at the Dutch benefits report, is the amount of flexibility offered in Dutch companies when it comes to like remote work, like flexible work overall. I think that number of 43%, like a lot of freedom and autonomy for employees to work whenever they come to the office, and is like much higher than what we've seen in France. It's much higher than I think the early results we've seen in Germany as well. And I don't know, it's like more a question maybe for Florian. It's like, is there a much more open culture when it comes to remote? Because really, I was surprised to see that much flexibility in the Netherlands.
Yeah, I think it's actually awesome. I did not expect it at all, because most companies I work for, they also ask me, do you have a policy example? Do you have a guideline? How should we structure this? How many days should they come? How do we register this? Because of the work from home allowance that they can get. So I was like positively surprised. And now I also say, well, maybe you don't need a rule. Maybe you can just see how people do and give it like a trial period of, I don't know, give it another 6 to 12 months. See if you need it, guidelines or a policy, or if you can just speak to the few people who you may want to see a little bit more often, and just leave the rest of the people to their business without telling them what to do. I think the autonomy here is really good.
And yeah, that was the most, honestly, that was the most surprising to me. The one that was more in line with what we've seen is like the stock option plan, stock options plan. Only 40% of company offering 41 stock option plans is where you see a lot of differences with the UK and especially the US. If you show this to any US candidates, or even people as professional in California saying that only 40% of companies are offering stock options, they will laugh at your face. Like it's unimaginable there, because it's part of the package, it's part of the custom. I think that's really, when it comes to stocks and equity, there's like the US as a trendsetter into how popular it is, how understood it is, because we talked about communication understanding. Then there's the UK, and then the rest of mainland Europe is a bit really lagging behind in terms of how many companies are giving out equity and how many candidates are expecting equity as well, because it goes along together, right? If more candidates are expecting equity, more will give it out. And the first part was on on pension. Sorry, pension is like a very specific one. It's one of the reasons why you have to localize benefits, because pension is very different from country to country. But one thing that's interesting, I don't know, I'd love to see maybe Florian, what you have to hear about this one, and you were talking about it earlier on, is in most countries, in startup, it's not a popular thing to implement, because it might be super financially efficient, like any contribution to pension scheme and pension retirement plan, super efficient financially, but super not sexy and not attractive to most people wanting to work in a startup. And that's, at the end of the day, Inge said that most of the objective when it comes to benefits is like attraction, retention, motivation. And if at the end of the day it's super financially it's a super good tool financially, but it's not attractive and not good at retention, it might be useless, right? And I'd love to see if you have like good story, like your thoughts on that and good example of what some companies did in that area.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that the pension, I think some pension is almost a hygiene factor, right? I think that so it's such a in the majority, let's say, of the labor market, it's a standardized thing to offer. Except in the Netherlands, especially for startups and scale-ups, you're not linked to a collective labor agreement, the CAO. So you have the freedom basically to choose. Still, it's pretty much well, for 74% is offering it. I think it's higher than I expected, to be honest. But still, it's also a little bit worrying on the other side that 26% of companies, and that's also a lot of people, don't save for retirement later. So in general, I think that there is a what I think Ingeborg said earlier. I think there's a big opportunity to educate people around the importance of pension by using your provider, perhaps, but use maybe financial planning. Like maybe just a personal example. I renovated my house a couple of years ago, and that was the first time when I had to ask my pension provider, what is my pension actually when I'm 67? And turned out I had like 500 euros per month on top of the AOW in the Netherlands, like the fixed pension. Well, if you have like a decent lifestyle, that's just not a lot of money, right? So I think a lot of people are just not aware of the impact. And there's something to say about companies who are younger than 30 have other costs to make, like buying maybe their first house, paying off study debt. But if you reach 30, if a majority of your workforce is 30 plus, I think it's super important to at least educate. That's also part of the zorgplicht, how we say it in the Netherlands. It's basically a duty to do, not to offer, but to at least educate. And I think that the vendor market was always very standardized. So if you would offer a pension, it's always for everyone. And maybe some people are valuing it, some people are not valuing it with a lot of benefits. So recently we worked together with Brand New Day to provide a flexible pension. So companies can decide, people can basically decide in the end if they want it or not, which is quite, I think there's a big opportunity there, but that's overall a little bit my take on the pension side. I don't know if you have something to add there, Ingeborg.
No, just that I agree, and I love the flexible pension because I think in the past, employers for startups would not do this because of the high cost and because they also themselves often don't understand the pension plan, whereas now you can simply offer a pension with a starting percentage of, I think, 1% as a contribution from the employer, which makes it a no-brainer to actually do it, and then give your employees the opportunity to top it up as much as they want. So I think most startups and scale-ups who are not offering a pension yet, I think you probably want to reconsider this as a benefit, especially if you want to attract more senior and experienced hires. Because if they don't see a pension in your benefits, they probably think, okay, this company is not serious enough, or I really want this. So you're excluding, 25% of your potential workforce. So I would recommend looking into it if you don't have it yet.
And one thing on
time,
I was about to move on from the L&D part and branching out to the question. One question that was on L&D, that was a super good question. Can't remember who it was from. Pim, right? Because we have the report on the budget, average budget for individual when it comes to learning and development, right? 500 to 1,500 euros. But there was a very good question of like how much of that being used per employee, right? And I don't think we had that in the survey, but it's a good question. Often in most companies, there's a budget allocated per person, but most people don't end up using it. By history, when we did benchmarks on that during my time at Criteo, so it was 3,000 employees organization, we had like, I think between 20 and 30% of employees using L&D budget on a yearly basis. And most of it was what? Manager training and English training, or like French, or like language lessons, right? We tried some stuff like on Coursera, it didn't work too much. We tried to push people on like external training, didn't work too much. So I still think learning and development is one area of HR where there's a lot of work to do and potential improvement to come, because there's budget there. There's also sponsoring by governments in terms of that budget, but it's very tough to drive usage and drive engagement around that budget. So the only benchmark I had to your question, Pim, was around 20 to 30% of any employee using some form of L&D budget on a yearly basis. And but I don't know if you have anyone has extra numbers on this.
Yeah, it's indeed, I think 20%. We work with a company, Study Tube. It's a big vendor in the Netherlands on learning and development. I know that their CEO told me some time ago they have a lot of L&D budget sitting in their platform, and approximately just 20% is being used by people. Yeah.
I think the way to get people to use their L&D budget is to actually allocate it to individuals. Like if you have €1,000 and you're allowed to spend it, you'll probably spend it, and quite wisely also, because you know you can spend it. Companies are often afraid that people will spend their full budget because they have it. But if you turn it around, you kind of want your people to spend that budget and learn rather than being worried that they use it. So a lot of companies decide, no, there's this corporate global L&D budget. And then only the people who ask for it, or managers that say, my team needs a training, they get it. But if you wait for people to ask, you're missing out on a really large group who is just not going to ask for it. But if they had it, they would probably do the training. So my recommendation would be to find like a balance between those two and say you put a budget aside for corporate global skill training. And then you put a budget aside that you allocate to people probably based on their seniority, like a junior in customer support will probably get a different type of budget for the year than a senior engineering manager. So you can create a few layers. And then on top of that, you have an extra, pot of money that you hold aside for people who really need it, that don't have enough from the budget that you individually allocated. And that way you can always offer anyone training every year. And you also encourage them to use their own budget, but it's not immediately the full budget that you set aside. So it requires a little bit more thinking, but it's not overly complicated. But as soon as you don't allocate individual learning budgets to people, you'll see what happens is always the people with the biggest mouth and not necessarily the people who need it most who will be allocated the budget.
Often an issue in HR, right? If you're being, no, but it's true. As an HR professional, if you're being reactive and responsive, it's L&D, it's compensation, it's in a lot of topics. You end up favoring those that want to talk and can talk and have the biggest mouth versus those that potentially deserve it.
Yeah, and amazing. We've overrun a bit by 3 minutes, but I just want to make sure if there's any outstanding big questions, if people are dropping them in the chat, if we can't cover them now, we can come back to you with some answers later. I know Florian's just been answering some, but in the last 2 minutes, if people are still on with us, is there anything burning that someone kind of would like an answer to before we kind of end the webinar today? I like this Marco question around offering pensions to younger employees. If you're not doing it, is it fair? I'm actually curious to hear your thoughts on that, because not many young people will be aware of the impact till much later.
But it's ethical, right? It's a good question. It's what I was mentioning earlier on. If you know that the most efficient thing to do is to implement mobility benefits or give out money to people, but probably the most critical for them probably is to contribute to pension, but that's less attractive to employees. Do you do the fair thing or the ethical thing, or do you do the efficient one? It's a good question overall. Because I tend to agree. I think for most younger person, it's been proven that the younger you start investing into your pension, the biggest benefit is compounding benefits, right? So the first thing to do is probably that. But if you have a budget and you think it's less efficient than throwing out parties every month in the rooftop of the office, what do? Do you do the party because it's attractive to people, or do you do the retirement benefits? I don't know.
I think in the Netherlands, you can't really choose, like I offer some people pension and others not. You kind of offer the same thing to all your employees. So my take would be that you definitely offer it also to younger employees. But what you see is that the founders of startup companies are sometimes quite young themselves. They don't really see the pension benefit yet. They're kind of like, I need the cash now, so I prefer it now. And based on their assumption and need, they decide on the benefits package, which then sometimes doesn't include the pension because they themselves don't value it. So it's also an educational piece on it's actually low cost, really high impact later on. And you're right, the financial well-being. So yeah, it's definitely not fair not to offer it.
No.
Amazing.
I agree.
I love the last question actually on giving space for employees to actually use these benefits within their working time versus using it outside in their free time. In 1 minute, and then we'll kind of end it there. I'm actually curious what you guys think about that.
I think
So use
this one,
benefits in work time?
like learning and development, right? I think if you think it's beneficial, I think the key difference that most companies will make is that an initiative that's tied to your role and will benefit from the company, right? If is it going to make you better as a professional, and therefore I'm benefiting from it as a company, therefore I should be on work time. I think it's kind of crazy to ask a person to do it on top of their time. But if the person wants to take, and it's a good question, should they? We decided to back in the day as well to give out budget for people to learn how to cook and whatever like that, because they much make them happier to use some of our airline budget to do that. But they had to do it. We will be willing to pay for some of it, but they had to do it on outside work hours. That was my take, which makes kind of sense, right? But
also, maybe adding from my perspective, working in a startup, especially when you're pushing to kind of build a market and you're just so busy executing, it's almost impossible to step back and focus on the development of yourself. So I don't know, any other employees are on the call as well. I think it's super tricky to find the time, even within your work, to carve out to actually dedicate to that. But maybe it's founders pushing this to be like, it's important that you do it, because if you don't, then we're actually going to lose that opportunity cost with you in the development phase. I don't know. Mm-hmm. Okay, I think that's time. But last thing.
No, it was not the last thing. I was about to answer to this one, but I'd rather we end on a more on a different one.
Okay. Thanks everyone for joining. I hope this was adding a bit more to the report if you did read it. If you've not read it, please go and read it. We hope that it's a really useful open source for everyone to share and leverage. Thanks to Florian, Ingeborg, Virgil for joining and kind of sharing your thoughts. Always a pleasure to reconnect. If anyone has any more questions, please do share them either directly with us. And of course, we'll do our best to also share the recording and anything extra from the webinar today. But thanks all, and be safe and take care.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks for joining.